Welcome back to another episode of Pulse of Polynesia. I am your host, Leaso Li'i, coming to you live from Texas. Tonight, we're opening the pages of Samoa's living history, stories of courage, loss, resilience, and the legend that still echoes across our islands.
Yeah, Talafalava, and I'm Chief Tasia Alpha, joining you from Oklahoma. Boomer Sooner, what a great win, right? To all our Michigan fans out there. It is what it is. Boomer Sooner. I just got back from the game, so still on a high from the game. So, from the last execution that shook American Samoa to the mystery of Tutuila star mounds, from chiefs who fought against slavery to legends of rocks, sharks, turtles, and tattooing, we're bringing it all to the table tonight. Let's dive in.
All right, let's see. All right, Arlington, what do you want us to start with? Should we start with the Napoleon and the Asu, revisit that again?
Yeah.
All
So
right.
we covered the last time we had our Tutuila stories. We did visit the Asu massacre. We sort of gave the audience some of the possibilities of what led to that massacre, but then we forgot to mention several things that interesting trivia, right? For interesting trivia for our audience, and for some that do not know, one of the interesting aspects of this Asu massacre was when the French were preparing for this fleet or this voyage to the Pacific, one interesting historical figure that wanted to, he was interested in this journey. And the person that we're referring to is Napoleon Bonaparte, right? Right, Lasso? What do we
Yes.
know about this guy?
Other than our discussion that we had earlier, where I was talking about how much of a criminal that he is, but I'm kind of wondering, how does he play a part in Tutuila, right? Was he a
Yeah,
part of that voyage that came to Tutuila?
right. And his in history, we say we know what Napoleon did in a worldwide scale, all the wars that he fought, and how he had Europe involved. So the question is, imagine a world without Napoleon, because we knew the fate of La Perouse's crew. We knew that half of his crew were massacred in Cucuila, and then the rest were lost, later on in the Pacific. So we know that the chances of anyone surviving, Napoleon, had he made it on this fleet, he would also have either been killed in Cucuila, or he would have been lost at sea, you know, later on, because that was the fate of the rest of the crew. So the survivors that survived Cucuila, out of that massacre, they were ill fated, as we mentioned last time. They also died and they were lost at sea. So that begs the question: what do we know about Napoleon? Well, history tells us all what Napoleon has done, but can you imagine a world without Napoleon? I mean, just going back in history, without Napoleon, if he had been on the ship, what would the world be like? And one of the things that we brought up was, or we looked into, was Napoleon to fund his wars. One of the things that he had done was to sell the United States, Louisiana, right? The Louisiana
Mm.
Purchase. So, we sort of study some of that in history. Thomas Jefferson purchased Louisiana for several millions, and that will
Mhm.
help Napoleon fund his war. So, anything interesting else that you come across, Leslie?
Well, other than finding out that the way that Napoleon had run his people, well, his soldiers was they were the reason why I call them criminals is because what I've learned was um, there was a bunch of Palestinian people that he had killed and murdered,
Mm,
about 3,000 people that he had captive. And instead of releasing them, he told his soldiers to kill them because there was not enough soldiers and there was just too many of these people. And I kind of feel like it was kind of the same tactic as was used during the Asu massacre.
mhm.
Um, they didn't want to attack the Samoans because they were outnumbered by thousands of our Samoans, and but instead they, like what you mentioned before, there must have been a miscommunication, and that's the reason why this all started with the war. Um, but it leads me back to Napoleon, right?
Mm,
How the mindset of these men, how they were, and they had it was almost like there was a lot of disrespect in the way that their manners were to foreign people, because they were
Mhm.
foreign in a country that they had didn't show respect or didn't know how to show respect, which leads me to, well, this is just the way that Napoleon had um, made his people become his soldiers. But I also wonder, so if Napoleon was there, I think it would have been written in the record, right? But what you're mentioning is, like, my question is, how does he play a factor in
Yeah.
Tutuila? You
If
know,
he was on that ship, you think his leadership style, as brute as he was, he
mhm.
would have been more of an aggressive
Yes,
type of person, right? He
yeah,
probably wouldn't have been so under control like Laprousse, because I think the guidance to Laprousse was, "We're not. I'm not sending you out as a conqueror, right? You're not there to go conquer the people of the Pacific, but you know, we're going out as goodwill, right? To
mhm.
promote a good view of us French people." So I think that was the mentality that he had, and there's also, you know, publications out there that details how much Laprousse, he had the capability to use his cannons. He could have wiped out more Samoans had he want to. And I was watching what's that series with Jason Momoa? What's that one called?
Chief
Yeah,
of
the one.
Wars.
Okay, so I was watching that last night, and I thought about this Laprousse issue. They loaded their cannons with all these nails, right? And all the natives, they're on the shore, and they just start bombarding them with their cannons, and they're just spraying all these nails and oh, absolutely massacring, everyone on shore. La Perouse's crew had that capability, right? They had that capability of returning that to the Samoan people, but he had that. We have to at least give La Perouse that much credit for
Hmm.
having what would you say? Not poise, but um, it's like calm, like reserve, right? The reserved,
Yeah, well, he
like
had
if
a lot of
someone,
control,
yeah, if
and
someone killed someone so close to you, like one of your soldiers, or so many of your men, how would you respond? Right? Would you retaliate? Like what you mentioned earlier, Napoleon, his mindset was, oh, we have no one to watch these people that we've conquered, so let's just murder him, right? So
right,
different in mentality, like what you're saying, comparing Napoleon's style of leadership versus La Perouse's
the
style of
Bruce, yeah.
leadership. So very interesting.
But then it leads me back to, um, there had to be a relationship, like a very close relationship with LeBruce and our Samoan people at that time,
Hmm.
that made him hold back. I mean, the fact that our own people gave them 500 supplies worth of cows, pigs, I mean, not cows, pigs, fruits, all the
Yeah,
what necessities to
all
survive
the
on the
provisions for their
right
next
on the
journey, right?
voyage, dogs
Mhm.
and whatever is needed. There was a relationship built of respect somehow that allowed him to think, well, telling the guys, don't do this. And I'm sure that he knew his men were wrong.
Yeah,
And that's why he held back. And the fact that the our some white people, the ones that kept that were alive, that was kept, were there about seven, I believe. And one of them,
yeah,
an Asian man, Chinese, that was
yeah,
in record.
yeah. The Asian family, because there's somewhere on Facebook, I think it's on American Samoa. Through the years, one of the
Hmm.
descendants, came out and said, "Yeah, my great 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 grandfather also survived, and we are the descendants." It was great. It's great to hear,
Yeah,
what history is not telling us, because they tell us, well, what did we hear last time we talked about the cannibals? Because that's what they deemed us as. They said that we are
our
Samoan people.
savages. Yeah,
Yeah, they ate the the French people, but that's not what
yeah,
happened, right? So, just
yeah.
going back to the
Hmm.
respect that our people had. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it leads me to believe that it was written in a certain way to have the world see us Samoans as savages, But truthfully, that was to make them feel like these guys were courageous, and they did this monument, and let's in remembrance of those who had died in the massacre, without understanding, well, there was a reason why this happened. Did you not ask
Hmm.
the other side, right?
Yeah,
And so that painted us in a bad way. But realizing, well, those people that were captive are by our own people ended up staying and married into
yeah,
our Samoans, and so that
yeah,
says a lot too.
yeah. That narrative of the survivors living
Hmm.
among the Samoan people does not fit well with the narrative that they're saying we've massacred and ate these folks, right? Because
Yes.
cannibals won't, you're not gonna save a dish for
Right, right.
carve them a dish,
Exactly.
but you're not gonna,
Exactly. Yeah.
keep them for later on and let them marry your people and let them have, children and so forth. So,
Hmm.
but it's good to have
But
these survivors tell their story because, we say we need to get the history, we need to correct the
mhm,
history that people are publishing these books and saying we were heathens or savages, but you know, these survivors and their families are telling otherwise.
right, right. And that's why I love about hearing the other side. Like for what I was reading on LaBerce's side of the story was it was more of a saving face type, because just learning about how Napoleon ran his soldiers is nothing compared to how this was taken care of. But at the same time, I have to say this act protected us from many more that was to come.
Right. and
You
and
know,
that's sort of the thought process was, why does someone's culture survive, and a lot of it was because the early colonizers feared, this event scarred, so many other colonizers that they decided, you don't want to go to that island, right? We had this stigma that they were cannibals and they were not friendly.
yeah,
So they avoided Assambo, and it worked in our favor because it allowed our culture to survive. And they were now colonizing other places and they were just wiping out their cultures, right? By the time they
I
reached
agree.
us, at least there were several other people within those voyages that said, you know let's preserve, can we leave one island alone, right? We've seen what
Hmm.
you've done to Tahiti. We've seen what you've done to all these other islands. You're wiping out their culture. Can we at least leave one island alone so that way one day we can look back and say, wow, a culture was preserved and we can still understand these people today. And
Yep.
that's why our culture is still strong today, is because of these events, right? So we were very fortunate for these palangis dodging us.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I totally agree.
yeah. And I think we've covered most of our Asu. The only thing we wanted to bring out, because Napoleon is such a significant person in world history, but very few people know that he had, registered and he was close to joining this trip. But then we all know his stature, very short guy, right? So he didn't meet the height requirements. And I think the other thing they mentioned was his body was frail. So he didn't, the way they looked at it was his body wasn't good enough to make the long journey. So for those in the
Yeah.
military, we're all familiar with when you go to MEPS, right? The first time you go to MEPS, they make you do all these strenuous activities. You do the duck walk. Are you flat footed? So they're
Mm.
doing a screening process and they're saying, you know, maybe this guy is not fit, for these long journeys. So we need strong guys. And it probably worked in his favor because he went and became, famous for all the other things for France that we would
And
not
so many
have
of
him
the wrong
do.
reasons.
Yeah, Samuel would have claimed him. He would have been a name on that monument, perhaps, had he joined that journey. So,
He had short man syndrome. That's why he had to prove a lot. He had a chip on his shoulder.
yeah. And those kind of guys are ruthless. So you don't want to mess with them.
Yep. Yep.
Napoleon sort of reminds me of who we talked about last time, Terhune. So Napoleon and Terhune sound like they're brothers.
You never know. There could probably be a close relative. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Last, did we get any viewer comments? I thought I seen something pop up.
Yes.
Oh, talo
Kalani.
talo sunga kalani.
Oh, sorry, man. I almost didn't make it because I was. Are we? Wait, wait. Are we live?
Yes, you arrived, and
Hey,
welcome.
oh, sorry. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
It was just
thank
a
you.
last minute birthday party invite, so but it turned
Oh,
out
no
into
worries.
Yeah,
a
Man,
dinner
tell me
too.
there was some Polynesian food.
No, well, there was, but I wasn't really up for it because I wouldn't be falling asleep right now. Just got off work this afternoon and I couldn't. So yeah, sorry about that.
oh, you're
Oh, no,
fine.
you're good.
I,
Um, so there's a comment here that said, okay, okay, good evening, Pulse of Polynesia family. Yeah, good evening as well.
Hi, Jens.
I remember having to duck walk because I was flat-footed. Yeah, see, these are the
Mm.
stories that we know. You know, I'm gonna deviate just a bit, Leaso, because I want to address this duck walking. When you join the military, like I'm flat-footed, and my military career almost ended on day one. And
Oh,
the
wow.
Palangi there was another guy. It was a sergeant that was doing the duck walk, and he was like, he told me and three other Samoan guys, you guys go to that group over there. So like we were already DQ disqualified from day one, and then there were like three other Samoan guys that were fit. Well, their body types and
Hmm.
they weren't as flat footed as I was. They were like, okay, you're good to join the army. But then, thank God, they were short on numbers because the lieutenant was like, I need more people. So he looked back at us flat footed folks and he's like, come on, let's go do it again. And for some reason, he made me do it like three or four times. And he just said, okay, he put me in the other group that passed. I was like, oh, thank God, because my army career almost ended on day one.
Wow.
So I almost got DQ'd.
So you had to pass a test, even with being flat-footed, to be able to get through basic training or go through basic training. Is that what
Yeah,
that is?
before you even ship, right? Before they
Okay.
even say you're like, you can even sign any papers to join.
Mm. Oh, when
They
you do
do
your
a medical
physical. Okay.
qualification, yeah.
Okay.
And even that, like, because we came from Samoa, and you think I'm in a clear, and then you get to Hawaii, and that's when they do the next physical, and you're like, man, I thought I was good,
Mm.
but then Hawaii also does the same thing. You have to pass theirs. So once you pass
Wow.
Hawaii, and then now you're smooth sailing, heading to basic training. Yep.
Kalani, did you serve the military too?
no, 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 no,
Okay. Okay.
I didn't. Um, actually, from the military family, my sister actually served it, and I have my stepbrother that actually served in the military as well as 26 years in the Marine. I
Nice.
guess I just happened to be in the one breaking the chain to where that, hey, let's not go that way. Let me see if I
Yeah.
can do it. But yeah.
So Kalani, the video you posted in Samoa, when were you in Samoa? Did you just get back, or was that an old video?
Oh, that was actually it's a 1 year anniversary for my brother's funeral
Mm-hmm.
that I actually attended last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, we uh last time I was back in Samoa was back in 2009 for my little sister's graduation.
Mm.
And then yeah, from that 2009 all the way till about 2024 last year. And man, it was it was one of the moments that should I choose my family or should I choose my land?
Oh,
But you know what? I have to make sure that I have to come back home for the wife and the kids.
Oh,
But it
oh,
was
that's
really
good.
nice. Yeah. Not really a fan. I'm not, I don't know. I guess because of the lot of social media platform
mm,
and TikTok. And I didn't even know that TikTok has a lot of information. I mean,
Yeah.
good in some sort of good. But yeah, it was good to see back home, the land and
yeah.
everything.
I love the
So
video. Like I was telling you, it makes you miss home. What caught my eye, because I think when you opened that video was, they had that Niners and Samoa flag, and I was like, hold up, that's my flag. And then I was telling Lasso earlier, that flag right there, that it's always on every podcast, that's the flag that's in your video. I was like, hey, I made that
it
flag.
is. You did. Yeah. Yeah. He's a hardcore 49er fan, but I had to be I had to swallow my pride and then I go ahead and I have to put that on. I was like, all right, I'll be a 49er
Oh.
fan.
When I seen you pop up, I said, what's Kalani doing with my flag over there? I got all excited.
Yeah. It was nice. It was nice to be back home. Yeah.
So sorry, audience, we had to deviate a little bit, but welcoming Kalani back
Mhm.
from Samoa, and he went back to his one brother's 1 year anniversary since his passing, right? So What village was that again?
Okay.
Tula. It was from
Tula.
Tula. Yeah,
Right.
Oh.
all
Um,
the way at the east coast, where I guess where the island starts from. Even though there's other villages in the back passes us, but I guess Tula considered is that's the first village of Pango Pango in American Samoa
yeah.
or
Mm.
Tutuila. So
So,
And
yeah, it
also
was nice.
beautiful too. Yeah.
Very beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
so before we move on, you just reminded me we had our last two Tutuila stories, and we did talk about the Awelua family, Salute and
Mm.
Lemurie. And we did offer our apologies to the family. Some of the comments we did
Mm.
cover your family story, and but we would like to publicly announce it right now. Apologies
Yeah.
if we offended any of the families the way we represented the story that we told. So I've been working with Brother Showen, who is you know directly related to the family. So a lot of the fact finding is been worked through Showen. So, but for the rest of the family who are not aware, we also want to offer apologies if we offended you in any way. But we'll continue to work with Showen and
Mhm.
and tell the story as your family likes to tell it. So um,
Yeah.
that being said, let's move on to our next one. So where are we heading now?
All right. So now that we've already discussed Napoleon and um, his relationships with the Asu massacre and how that played a part, we're going to jump into missionary John Williams
Oh
and
yeah,
his fear of Tutuila.
oh yeah. Kalani, so we're gonna. I think you had the some of the questions we went through, right? So we're gonna cover John Williams's. So
Okay.
we all
Yeah.
know John Williams went to Bolu, but then we're now focusing on his trip to Kukuila, and it's sort of comical. So bear with us. Go ahead, Lasso.
Yeah.
All right. So
No problem.
what I've learned about John Williams is very interesting, and um, going past the Catholic Church in Leone,
Mm,
I noticed that there was a monument in front, but I never played part into understanding what that monument was until I started to look up John Williams. And I was just very intrigued with the story of John Williams. But I wanted to ask you if you wanted to tell us, Arlington, about who was John Williams and what was his role in the Pacific Mission before I share my point.
yeah, and just going back to what we
Mhm.
all know about John Williams, he was the one that brought the Christian um, religion to Samoa. At least that's what most of us hear. But I also want to add on that he was not the first Christian, there, because we all know that there were other landings. Like Manua also believes, Roggeveen, when he landed, there's some Manua people said that when John Williams arrived, he went to Manua. Manua people were already practicing. So these are things that we have to keep in mind that each island has their own stories, and you'll hear John Williams mention a lot. Samoans would say, "Wakamu umele kala lei," the Christian faith and religion has now arrived in Tutuila, and he's given credit, a lot of credit. But then, when you do more digging, and you realize these guys were not the first ones who arrived in Samoa. We talked about in the past, it was the beachcombers, right? They were there as well prior to the missionaries. And then we also understand the Mikokishi, right? The Methodist Church. They were there
Mhm.
prior to. But some of the things that we're gonna sort of question John Williams' character, not in a too bad of a way, but in a comical way. So some of the
Mhm.
things that we hear about John Williams is he went to Samoa, and after he's established, this faith with Maliatua, he comes back and he tells the Methodist Church, "I just came back from London, and the agreement was you guys can move out and go to Tonga and establish the religion there, and the LMS will establish themselves in Samoa." So that being said, that sort of brings to life these terms we use today, loku kaiki, or loku konga, right? It arrives from some of these, this is our history, right? We only hear these when we speak in Samoa, leala lokunga ke lokoi, and they say, lokukonga or lokukaiki or so forth. But we're walking you back to, our first time when the Christians arrived. Okay, throw that back up, Leaso. Let me see what that
Okay.
person said. Oh, hi, Chief. Talofa, hi, Chief. Talofa, Pulse of Polynesia. Top of the evening to you guys, Sister Leaso, Chief Tasi, Brother Kalani. Tula would be the first Kalani, since Ongo is in the back. Okay, it's going back to Kalani's village. Always great to have you. Hi, Chief.
Mhm.
So that's who John Williams is, and well, we're introducing. John Williams had documented a lot of things, and one of the islands that he had to go to was Kukuila. And what you'll find in the reading that Lasso will share here shortly is it ties back to the story we just told, the Aasu massacre. And we mentioned that people, the colonizers, were so afraid of Kukuila and Samoa because they thought they were heathens, they were cannibals. So even this person, person of faith who is bringing the religion to Samoa, also had such fear in him that he was so afraid of Samoa that, especially Kukuila, he was afraid that he was going to be a martyr and get murdered there by the Samoan people. So go ahead, Lasso.
Okay. So I'm gonna start reading from the bottom paragraph all the way to the second page. It's very interesting. So a canoe now came alongside with an Englishman who called himself William Gray and said that he had been at Tutuila about 3 years. As the natives were very clamorous for powder and muskets, was inquired of Gray whether they were at war, and found the two powerful chiefs were expected shortly to engage in severe conflict. So I wonder who those two chiefs were that were,
Ready to go to
about to go
war,
to
huh?
war
Yeah.
with each other. Um, where am I? Okay. Upon asking him whether the people of Tutuila had heard of our missionaries and had become Christians, he informed me that very many have renounced heathenism at
Mm,
Savai'i and Upolu. So I had to look up what the heathenism is, and that is just referring to people who don't believe in Christianity. They worship idols, they worship other things than that they believe are gods. And so and I guess they also call them savages as well.
yeah. I think the Samoan word you hear a lot is fa'apaupau, right?
Mm.
Am I right, Kalani? Fa'apaupau.
Yeah, or in nowadays modern terms is Oleaula Wasa.
Oh, there you go. Love it.
All right, so he informed me that very many have renounced heathenism at Savai'i and Upolu, but only a few had done so at Tutuila. Having obtained all the information we could from this individual, we prosecuted our voyage down the south coast, the varied beauties of which struck us with the surprise and delight as we glided past them. At length, we reached a district called Leonge, where
Mm,
the young man who we had brought from Manua resided. On entering the mouth of the spacious, beautiful bay, we were boarded by a person who introduced himself as the son of the world, as the son of the word. We
mm,
gave him a hearty welcome and learned, in reply to our inquiries, that in his district about 50 persons had embraced Christianity, had erected a place of worship, and were anxiously waiting my arrival. This information was unexpected and delightful, and I determined immediately to visit the spot. With this intent, we lowered our little boat and approached the shore. When about 20 yards from the beach, at the heathen presented rather a formidable appearance, I desired the native crew to cease rowing and unite with me in prayer, which was our usual practice when exposed to danger. So
great
I was
stuff,
just
there,
telling
Lasso.
you this. Yeah, I
Kalani, are you familiar with this piece of story of John Williams?
No, no, no. Tell you the truth. I mean, I've heard only bits of it, but this is really interesting to hear about.
mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead. Probably have
yeah.
some question
So
after that.
Brother Molito, if you're on, because he's from Leone, and he would probably know more of the story. But he'll also like laugh about it. And, we're missing you, Moliko, but if you're on here, we would share a laugh here. So what Aso is saying, before they came to Kukuila, they brought this gentleman from Mangua, but he lives in Leone, so he wanted to hitch a ride and bring him back to Leone. So like I was mentioning earlier, this is their first time coming to Kukuila, and he's still having this mindset fear of of the Asu massacre. That's what's going through John Williams's mind. And then as they near the Leonge Bay, as it's stated here, like he sees these islanders, and from his perspective, I'm just gonna say something in Samoan real quick. Mokwafe aiya, melev ayako. Like he's afraid. Like he sees these Samoans. He's like, they're heathens. Oh man, these people are gonna kill me. Let's hold hands and let's pray.
Yeah.
So not knowing that these are actually already converted people that were waiting
Mhm.
for him. So go ahead and continue that. I just wanted to
Okay.
add
Yeah.
that.
The chief, who stood in the center of the assembled multitude, supposing that we were afraid to land, made the people sit down under the grove of breadfruit, coconut, and other trees which grit the shore. He then waded into the water up to nearly up. He then waded into the water nearly up to his neck and took hold of the boat. When addressing me in his native tongue, he said, "Son, will you not come ashore? Will you not land amongst us?" To this reply, to this I replied, "I do not know that I should trust myself. I have heard a sad account of you in this bay, that you have taken two boats and that you are exceedingly savage. And perhaps you get me into your possession, you will either injure my person or demand a ransom for my release."
Okay, you can stop right there. So I
Okay.
will try to break down what you just heard. So he, like, again, he's thinking of Asu, but the maps that they had at the time of Kukuila were sort of not correct. So what he has in his hand, he's thinking he's landed in Asu, but he doesn't know that he's landed in Leonge. But that's what he's referring to. I've heard the story of what happened. You're like, oh my god, do I trust you? Are you trying to lure me in to murder me like those Frenchmen? La Perouse's crew is what he's referring to. So go ahead.
Yeah, but you would think that the kid that he brought with him from Manua would have told him, like, no, this is my village Leonge, it's not Aasu.
Yeah, but you remember, like, they didn't trust Kukuila. Like he's still, like, he's
Oh.
admitting savages, right? Heathen.
Mm.
Like, do I even trust this guy? Like, but God is telling me to go and deliver the word. But God, do I trust you? Let me pray again. Are you with me, God?
Yeah. So he goes, "Oh," he shouted, "we are not savage, we are Christians." "You Christians?" I said. Where did you hear of Christianity?"
You know what? We need a Samoan. That needs to be in a Samoan
Yeah,
translation for,
translation.
because it's
Eh,
funny. Like, I would like to say that, when you see those people tell the story of John Williams, it'd be nice for them to tell that story and someone will say, interpret that in Samoan because it will sound so funny. You know, "Ikiva ai me yung kangakafi ai ngakangi."
and the humor and with the words.
Yeah.
Because, like, I read it, but then that's how I interpret it as a Samoan person, because we still get that today. People fear of us, right? Like, you can read their thoughts, like, geez, like, I'm just a regular person, why are you so afraid of me?
So did John Williams, is it because of his previous experience since that he landed in Sapapali in Savai'i, then kind of take it to where that the same people, or is it I'm just trying to follow the story because
Oh
I
yeah,
only heard the little bit of story.
this is his second trip back because he went back to
To Samoa.
he went back to
Oh, okay.
London, and he was supposed to bring more teachers, right? He promised to bring more teachers to Malietoa and the people in Savai'i. But then he stopped there and he picked up a hitchhiker from Mangua.
Mahua. Makes
Yeah,
sense. That's cool.
but I like what you also mentioned. Like, there was a war going on, but maybe some of our viewers can tell us what war was going on when he came back, because
Mhm.
they were
Yeah.
already, what is 1832 or something like that when he came back. So
Yeah.
they were already experienced with firearms, right? So
Mhm.
we talked
Yeah.
about at what point did our Samoan people convert from our own weaponry to using muskets, and then you can see here evidence that they were already experienced with firearms.
Wow. Bear with me. I'm just listening and just following. So
Oh, you're
Oh,
good. You're
it's
good.
good because, like, we talk about history, right? And people always say, at what point did the Samoans use firearms? But we always
Yeah,
put the firearms later on when the Germans arrived, like further in history, like 1840s or 50s. But then, like, you read these stories right here, it says otherwise, and then you start to question, the other stories that are told, like, who's right, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Did John Williams make this up? Right? Like, I still question any publication, and sometimes I question, even John Williams's writing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because regardless of what war was going on during the time of Tutuila, if they had the muskets and everything, you can easily believe that they can defeat the Samoans back then. But no, for
yeah,
some reason that they were so scared that I guess our people kind of. I'm not really sure. So
yeah. And
Well,
to answer your question, Kalani, is you remember these guys are not a warship. These guys are,
missionaries, that's right.
missionaries. But then you
Yeah,
think about La Perouse's crew, that was a warship. So if the Samoans were able to massacre people on a warship,
yeah.
then you know that they can easily be overwhelmed.
Wow. Sorry to cut it off while
No, you're good.
Lasso's reading it.
no, you're good. Um, did I miss something?
There was a
Okay.
part that you mentioned earlier, Lasso. You had me cracking up. What was the part you were saying about the canoes rowing?
Oh yeah. So there was a part in the story where um John, well, oh gosh, what, I can't even think. So John Williams was really surprised at the strength that these guys from Leone, I mean, just pretty much the Samoans, they're on their ship, and these guys are coming out from shore with their canoe, and they caught up to the ship, and they just couldn't believe the strength and the speed of them rowing their canoe at the same speed, but even faster than the
Keeping
ship.
up, right? Keeping up with their ships. Yeah.
Yeah, keeping up with the ship, and then on top of that, they got off of their canoe, and some of them stayed on, but some of them got off their canoe, jumped onto their ship, and climbed on their board or their ship. So
Hmm.
I mean, that just says a lot about our people back then. They didn't
Yeah.
have gout, they didn't have diabetes, but they were strong and
Yeah.
fit, and just the strength overall is just crazy.
It just brought me back sometimes the some of the stories that I when I was in elementary, we had a math teacher that he was actually a storyteller. And he actually
Mm,
mentioned something that I would say the goddess and the ghost and people in Samoa back in the days that were all together and it was real. And I guess that's
Hmm.
where the goddess come from because the brave, the toa, that's where the
Hmm.
toa comes from. But that if you are one of the toas, I guess you got to commit a lot of criminal crime as
Hmm.
far as murder to become a toa brave man. But
Yeah.
these are probably some of the people that we actually talk about that, wow, if they were catching up to these big ships that they actually, you know, relying on the wind so they can get that fast
Right.
drift or something like that. But with our people right there rowing to where that it can catch up, I just have a,
yeah,
I'm just suspecting to where that, well, maybe there are some Maikus that are actually with them, but that's just a mythology. So,
Nice. Um, yeah. To add on to Lasso's point was, not only they were rowing the canoes as fast, they were circling them, and
yeah,
the other interesting aspect of it was the agility of the Samoan people. Not only were they able to catch up, but then it said it didn't take them so long. They were like, the way he described it almost sounded like ninjas. Like they were able to like jump and climb onto the ships, and before they knew it, like from the point that they anchored like to the ship, they were already on top of the ship. Like they all jumped on board. So the way he describes it, it's amazing. The agility our people are, and we look at it today. We say, why are Polynesians so athletic? Well, look at
yeah,
what was happening then. These people were so agile. The way that they were moving. Um, what was that? The photo that you shared last time, Liaso, the photo of Manuma and the photo of Mongale facing each other. The body that those soldiers had, right? That's the image that if you take that image and you put that in perspective, now you know what we're talking about, how fit they were, how agile they were, and just the true warriors, like the warriors we see today, all the muscular ones that we have in AI. No,
yeah,
that's not what our soldiers were, or our people were. They were
yes.
thin, just lean and agile.
So what I did to create that image of Manga and the other chiefs on those AI pictures that we did
Mhm,
on our Tutuila War videos, I had to put in historical description of how they described the way our people looked.
mhm.
And once I put the prompt in, it generated that that's exactly how our people look. They were built, they were strong, naturally built. And so it's not like the bubble type built like the rock and
Yeah,
you could barely move.
yeah.
The
Everyone's huge.
chemicals, the chemical
Yeah,
build.
Yes, the chemical build. That's
steroids.
a good way to put it. Yeah.
They
But yeah,
were all natural. Those were all natural ones. Huh?
yeah, natural and at the same time agile. Like they're able, and very
Yeah.
flexible too. I like to see the rock climb a coconut tree with that built.
Not without the technology, all the modern technology nowadays, gonna have to need a belt and some sort of like tracks to track them up automatically.
Right?
For those who are not familiar with it, and just go to PCC and you'll see those different islanders because they do those demonstrations, and just watch how fast they climb those coconut trees. You know,
Yeah.
watch how fast they get up and get down. I mean, so that's the modern version, and let's just say that they are a step or two, slower compared to our ancestors. If we
Hmm.
had our ancestors compete with these guys, I'm pretty sure they
Yeah.
would put our guys to shame. This day and age.
Yeah.
So, but kudos to those who are able to climb a coconut tree. I know I can't
Yeah.
climb it, not at this age.
Yeah.
Just the off question. Off
Yeah.
question is, was cannibalism still practicing at the time when John Williams arrived in Osu or Domi?
Um, I'm trying to think. So when he interviewed Moma and he interviewed
Yeah.
others about cannibalism, they told him, that's not a practice that we do here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I
I'm
think
just
it's
trying
just
to.
one of those things that the Frenchmen when they left, that's what the stories that they told, you know,
Mm.
when they got
But
there.
he did get killed that way though, but it was in a different island, I believe,
Right.
Vanuatu, where they
Oh,
killed him and also ate him at the same time.
Yeah.
okay.
Mm.
So there's other
All right.
good stories that come out of John Williams's writing, and we hear a lot about Chief Mona, right? A lot of the revivals, right? A lot of the
Mhm.
revivals and the spiritual warfare, just getting the Samoan people to denounce their old faith and introducing them into Christianity. You hear a lot of so the things we see today in revivals, like people passing out. So it's interesting how he
Yeah.
mentions that. I think Mona, he writes so much about Mona, and then well, maybe I haven't got my stories incorrect. I think that was Archibald that wrote about Mona. But anyways, yeah, it wasn't John Williams. Sorry, I got the stories incorrect. So that was Archibald's story. So we'll save Archibald's story for a later time.
For later. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Just a quick question, Arlington, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
When John Williams, were in Sapapali'i, I remember that the LMS, I guess is London Missionary Society or something.
Yeah.
And then I guess when they're into Tutuila, it changed to a CCCS, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm,
Congregational Christian Church of Samoa.
FCAS, right? EFKAS.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Galaxia.
Yeah.
I forgot it's been
Yeah. Oh,
EFKAS.
not trying to move away from the
Yeah.
subject. I was just trying
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
if you know the difference, or is it still the same uh, practice or teachings per se?
Yeah. So the Lamosa, well, look, it's the Lokaiki, right?
Oh,
Mhm.
I'm not sure. Sorry. Yeah,
Well,
I was just
what is
trying
it?
to figure out the Lamosa and the CCCS,
Yeah.
if they're the same. But no,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's another subject.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
My brain's like this right now. So
I'm
Colin, I
sorry.
just came back from a OU game, and like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
that game was so exciting. With Michigan, I was telling Leaso, I almost didn't make it to the podcast because
Yeah.
we were trying to stay as late as possible,
Yeah.
and so my brain is like still high on that thrill of the OU
No
game. So
problem. No problem. I know the adrenaline's still there, but yeah, because of me being so far on the east side, that I do have some stories on the eastern side. But
oh
most
yeah,
of the stories that you guys are on this western side, I'm actually following along. I only heard a little bit of it and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's nice to hear about it. But Sorry
Yeah.
if I'm having questions, but it's kind of
Oh no,
like
you're
interesting
good.
too for our viewers to see if they have the same questions or anything. Maybe we can try to touch base into it, or maybe they can help us to provide some ideas and
Yeah.
opinions of what we're talking about. So yeah, sorry about
Yeah. And again,
No,
like
you're
Bonnie
good.
said, for our viewers, these types of questions, they're great questions. Like,
Yep.
I'm not able to answer it, but
right.
reaching out to our viewers, help us out as our podcast goes along. Throw it in the
Yeah,
chat, and then we'll
right.
address it. So appreciate that,
So
audience.
yeah,
Okay. Are we through with John Williams? What do you think?
Oh, so just to add on, so we're not going to read the whole thing, but just to,
Yeah.
to summarize a little of what you're seeing on here, John Williams is conversing with this chief, and he's talking about, he's comforting him so that he could come to shore, so he could see the people. He tells them like, down, he's a lot of us attend KFC now, whatever's. Sorry. So,
Is that is that Amo? Is that his name? Amo? Chief Amo? There was a whatever this chief's name is in Leone. I don't recognize that
uh,
name anymore. If anyone in the village of Leone,
mm,
know, this name right here, if that name is
I'm
still used
I think it's
in Leone, please share.
Amo Amo, yeah.
Is it Amo Amo?
humble.
Yeah,
Oh,
right upon landing, Amo Amo, the chief.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, because like I'm from Vailoa, but excuse me for our Leone folks, that name doesn't ring a bell. But for you Leone folks, feel free to chime in if that title is still used in your village, or maybe if you think there's something close to it that maybe John Williams incorrectly wrote it, go ahead and throw that in the chat as well in the
yeah.
comment section. So
So the unique thing about this, and I was telling Arlington earlier today, like, it just brought a lot of humility on my end because it just teared me up with that. It's a testimony in itself, right? Of how it's a testimony in itself about the journey of this chief and how he had talked to his people. He tells William, look ashore. Those are people who had converted to Christianity, and
mm,
they had put white cloth around their wrist or their arm to show who they are, that they're Christians, to distinguish them from those who are still heathens, is what they call them. And
mm,
so John William was really
pretty cool.
surprised. And so he asked this chief, Amo Amo,
mm,
who taught them Christianity. He tells them, I did. And then
mm,
he said, how did you learn about Christianity? He said, I believe he had to travel on his
yeah,
canoe to Savai to learn of the word. He
yeah,
had to learn of Christianity there. Once he gets his lesson, he
and comes back.
rows back his canoe back to Leone
Yeah,
to teach the people there. And then once he teaches the people, he goes back to Savai to get more lessons, and they come back. And while he's doing this, he also asks him, well, who's baptizing them? He tells him, I'm baptizing them. And then he said, how are you learning about the word? And he tells them, he's reading Tahitian.
mm,
The scripture is written in Tahitian,
yeah.
and I'll let
At the
you,
time, that's
Arlington,
the
talk about that.
publication they had.
Yeah.
They didn't have a Samo publication, so they brought the
Mhm.
Tahitian books, and that's what they taught him with. Yeah,
Wow.
but
Talking about
yeah. Go ahead,
physical,
Alan.
his physical was gotta be like one of them fit guy. I mean, if you're talking about rowing from Tutuila, they don't get all
Uh-huh.
the way to Savannah. You're talking about, I would say 200 to almost close to 300 miles of rowing. And if
Wow,
he's
he
doing
did.
all that work, I'm like, well, power to Chief Amwamo,
Uh-huh.
power to Chief Amwamo. So,
Right. And he was saying, he was asking John Williams, are you the missionaries, or do you have missionaries to teach? Because, he wants someone to be there to teach them Christianity so that he doesn't have to go take that strenuous journey to
Right.
Savai that he said is dangerous, you know.
wow,
Yeah,
wow.
going back to so all this voyage between the two islands, like we said, it was nothing to our people back then. And just going back to the Asu story, right? We talked about it. La Perouse said, I decided not to retaliate against the people of Tutuila. So when we were ready to head to Australia, we journeyed to Bolu, and we took that route, and we got close enough to where we seen the faces, and we recognized the faces of these people who were also in the massacre, right? So that was the interesting aspect, was because we said it wasn't the Asu people that that started the issue with the Frenchmen. It was the people or the Malanga Mayubolu. And then Laperouse acknowledges that. I seen the faces of the people who were there, a couple nights before, that they were in their canoes, in Upolu. But he, again, he didn't shoot at him, but he recognized those faces. But touching on what Kalani said, how our people were able just to go back and forth, right? So
Yeah.
after they massacred the Frenchmen, it didn't take them so long to get from Kukuila back to Upolu, and they're just hanging
Yeah.
out like it was nothing. So amazing how fit our people were.
I'm just trying to incorporate the time frame of how they have to travel from Tutuila to Savai'i and Savai'i back to teach the gospel or the
Yeah,
Christianity ways.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. I mean, if that's the way that they were doing it back in the days, hey, I'm pretty
Right.
sure that the gods were actually upon with them. So that's
amen.
probably why that they didn't have to roll that much. Maybe one paddle or one stroke, that they don't have to
He
worry about it.
right. He also mentioned, like, I was talking with a friend years ago when I was at school and in Hawaii, and I said it's kind of weird how when you go to the beaches, right, you see a lot of Palangis with their swimsuit, bikinis, and whatever, but then you see our Polynesian people so reserved. With
Yeah.
they're very reserved when they go to the beach. They don't show a lot, right? But then in this script, this book that I was reading, it talks about how John Williams, he mentions how our people looked rude. It was so rude looking at them because they just didn't have clothes much on to cover.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
so,
they
but
taught
that
us.
was a norm for our people, right?
They introduced to
Yeah.
be ashamed to show your bareness, right? So what was
Mhm.
natural to us was now sort of like a sin, and and that's the introduction of all these elaborate clothing, in church that we see, right?
Hmm.
But
It was
back
lighter for them.
to
It was
uh,
lighter for them. They didn't have to worry about anything, just trying to catch it when they're stretching all the way to roll that. They didn't have to worry about any fossil. That's probably why that they were making long strides of strokes that they can get to the island to teach the Christianity.
Right. And it makes you wonder, right? We didn't even travel with much.
Mm-mm.
Than these people voyaging with their ships. They probably had so much to take, and the clothes that these like these Frenchmen, you talk about these guys, these sailors that came over the naval, whatever,
Yeah.
they had a lot of clothing on, even in
mhm.
hot
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah, and the
Right.
humidity, ugh, so
And they
hot.
have
Wow.
their powders
That's
too for their
amazing.
face.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
let's think about we talk about memorials, right? So
Hmm.
if Amo had a significant role, why isn't he recognized, in
Yeah.
Tutuila? Where's his monument? Our
Yeah.
younger people, it's been a while since I read the whatever you call it, the monument. Maybe Amwamo is mentioned somewhere in there, so I don't want to say that he's not recognized because he probably is somewhere in there. I haven't read it in a while, so our younger folks, feel free to chime in.
Yeah.
Also go back to there was a comment that I think answers Kalani's question. There you go. I believe CCCAS or FCAS or EFKS in Samoa is birthed from the Lamosa. Okay. Thank you. Hi, Chief. Hi, Chief.
Thank you.
You had me
Thank you so
cracking up with
much.
your sliding rock last time. So,
Good old sliding rock.
uh, yeah, it's CCCS, CCAS nowadays. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's cool. Well, thank you
I
for the
want I want to
clarification.
also sorry, I want to also add, like
From
I was
Samoa.
also telling, because we were just discussing this earlier, how we were all born into Christianity, so it was a natural thing for us to know of our Savior Jesus Christ, to know of God, right? But you're talking about our people back then who had no idea who Jesus is. They had no idea who he was, and our people had no problem with killing. They had no problem with doing things that what they call it barbaric or savage. to be able to accept Christianity at its foreign language is just amazing to me how the Lord touches them even at that time where we knew of it, but they didn't. That
Mm-hmm.
says a lot. And it also says a lot about how Chief Amo Amo was a missionary and wasn't even told to be a missionary, that he felt it was a need for our people to know and for him to spread the gospel without being told to spread it was something just amazing,
Yeah.
you know, in itself and a testimony. So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that whoever is related to Chief Amo Amo, I'm sure his family is blessed enormously because of his work. So
Yeah.
Yes, right.
And with all that Lasso just said, I owe it to our viewers because I also have to present the other perspective. And we also have to acknowledge that be careful of what we read, including John Williams's writing, because you have to go back and look at John Williams's original journals, and there's so many discrepancies on how the original journal was written versus what was published. And you have to remember these stories were fabricated by the publishers to sell. And if you're also trying to promote your works and your religion in your country of London, they're wanting to see is your works truly fruitful. Look at the writings, like even Archibald's writings. I converted 300 some villagers, and you question yourselves. It's like, did Vailor really have 300 villagers? Like, something that doesn't sound right. But does London know that Vailor has 300? So, I just want to put that disclaimer out there. Be careful when you read, John Williams' stories or any biographies or anything that the Balangis wrote, because the original journals usually don't match what was published, and a lot of the numbers are fabricated for whatever reason, because the audience back their homeland wanted, it's all about quantity and quality. So you'll see that, some would say there were two people in church, was in the original log, but then you read what was published, it went from 2 to 40 to 300. So that's all I wanted to throw out there. So um, I owe it to the audience to at least, you know, when you're doing your research, don't take everything to heart, but there's another side of the story. Okay, perfect. What we have here, Yone Viliamu. Okay,
yeah, so this
okay.
is the monument in front of the Catholic Church, I believe, or the Christian church. No, it's a Catholic
Yeah,
church,
that's
right?
Lokaiki Church.
Look like you.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah,
in
that's
Leone. So
Yona.
Johnny William, John Williams, huh?
Yeah. So
Nice.
that's kind of his tribute, the Leone people, knowing that he was first touched down in Leone. Um, so it's kind of hard
Pretty
to
cool.
see, but I don't know if
yeah.
either Amuamu was mentioned in here, or did the guy from Mangua, right, that they brought home,
Mm.
was he even mentioned in here? But it talks about where he died at, right, where he was murdered. But it's sort
Yeah.
of a tribute to his legacy and what he gave to our people, bringing
A-
Christianity.
And I
Yeah.
believe just reading more about John William is that his family, where they reside, I believe in somewhere in Tahiti, they were able to, those in Vanuatu, they got his remains and I believe they gave it back to the family. And then they also, I think it was the early 2000s, his bloodline, his family that are still alive, um, they were able to receive apology from the people of Vanuatu
Mm,
in the early
Wow.
2000s. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
yeah. And a question for our Samoan people, and maybe there is, because I think I came across one article that was in the Samoa News or one of the Samoan newspapers, and it had a list of all the Samoan teachers, right? Those who went and taught the early Christian teachers who went to do the work, right? Like we mentioned, Monga Male, he was the son of the Monga when the Christianity arrived in Kukuila. So his son, the story goes, Monga Male's son could have been the next Monga to take over the Monga title, but he chose Christianity. He wanted to go and teach the word, so he devoted his life in going teaching Christianity. So he also died in a foreign country. Well, not his own homeland in Samoa, but then you question how many other Samoans devoted their life into the early promoting of Christianity, because now that they've accepted Christianity in Samoa, now it was bestowed upon them to go and preach the word to these other islands, and they also suffered a similar fate as John Williams did. So we had a lot of several Samoan people who also died, in a similar fate.
Mm,
How were they remembered? You know, is there any legacy
yeah,
to those early teachers? Just kind of a question for our Samoan people.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, John Williams, are we good?
Yes.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah,
Hi,
that's pretty
Chief.
cool.
Fighting Rock is where I
Yeah,
go to feel the spirit.
yeah.
Me
I mean,
too.
I guess if it wasn't for John Williams to actually writing all these down for our people to actually read about it and actually to to know, because our people back in the days, from what I've heard, every time my math teacher that I told you about that always tell the stories. I
Mhm,
guess that's why they always say "Kala ka kusam, wo kala aavi." I
mhm,
think to me, my interpretation of kala aavi is that if there is a story in Upolu, it'll go from generations or some people down there and "Aavia kwat kala nga ke ia wo ikukuila,"
right.
and then everybody have their own interpretation. But yeah, thanks to John Williams for writing those down for our people and stuff like that. But I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure that there are families out there that are related to this too. Yeah, please let us know. It's actually pretty cool for us to keep this history and everything,
yeah.
to let us tell stories about our history. Yeah,
And and for our Samoan people, I know it's Sunday
Mm,
in
right.
Samoa's people, and it's almost Sunday for us here in the States. So if you feel yourself lazy and you don't want to go to church on Sunday, just remember, what the Kukuila people had to do to bring the word to
Yeah,
Kukuila. They had to go to Savai'i and they had to go and learn, and then alo mai a pau singa koe inga kala imut kala lei kukuila. So he had to bring
man.
bring that. So remember those folks when you feel like you don't want to go to church. Just think about the sacrifices that others had done. The
yeah.
vast
Or if you
ocean.
want to go aikava, think about it when you drink your kava.
Yeah.
Drink your kava at night, but make sure you make it to church.
Just be there. Sorry.
Chi-
All
uh,
right.
Chief
Before
is
we get
probably High Chief is probably sipping on his kava right now.
yeah, juice come first.
Howdy, High Chief. Okay, where are we going to now, Lasso?
All right. So we're gonna talk about Imoa. Imoa.
Okay,
And so this is not his picture, but this is just a description of, just so we have like an image of what we're talking about.
okay,
So a little bit about Imoa. He was the last person to be executed in American Samoa.
okay.
All right. So what's so important about this, Arlington?
Yeah. So and Kalani, you're probably familiar with the Emo story, the song Fafafonga Samoa, right? So they
Yeah, yeah,
VE,
yeah.
yeah, there's a VE for Emo. So I'm not gonna really touch upon his story itself, but then my question I wanted to bring up to our Samoan people is, um, why do we honor Emo? But Emo was the one that murdered Sema, right? So he murdered Sema. But today we sympathize more about Imoa than we do Sema. And the question I have is there a VE for Sema, right? The guy that was murdered, like a VE for Imoa, right? We're so passionate about Imoa, but is this something unique to our people that we sympathize more of the person, the offender, versus the person who, you know, the family of the victim? So that's the question I wanted to bring out for our viewers. And any thoughts on that, Kalani?
Yeah. I don't sorry, I didn't really get to go through our topics, but I think it's just the fact that most of the stories that I was told is from my math teachers. This guy's name is Toma. Etewati Toma. I'm pretty sure some of our viewers probably know he's from Mopolo, and he was one of the best math teacher I ever had in Matatula Elementary. Holy fasawa. And he would always have that. It's a guava, little small thin stick, and the guava stick are really hard. Anyway, I remember telling the story about Imo, and I think he was telling the name Sima, but I think
Mm,
a lot of people refer to Senga, if I'm not mistaken, our viewers, if you don't mind.
mhm,
And I think back in the days, and then referring to the song Oletoa Ualeva,
mhm,
and I think that they referred that to Senga, and Senga was one of the oldest Toa back in the days. That in order for you to claim that name Brave Toa, that you have to committed a lot of murders in order for you to
mm,
become that person. And apparently that Senga was one of that Toa. During that time, Imoa, considered as a modern days at that time, heard about it. And I think Imoa was actually in Upolu or Savai'i at the time. Somehow, Olekala Ave nga Ave, Senga said something about Imoa.
mm,
And then I guess Imoa didn't even take that lightly. So he actually came to Kukuila and looked for Senga. Now at
mm,
the time, Senga was already, you know, declining down to where that he's already an old school Twa.
Mm.
And then I guess that's why Imoa, murdered him because of what Senga. So my apologies to the viewers if I ever leave anything out. You can please just forgive me, but just kind of like add to the story. And I think the reason why the song was so popular in the VE is because not only Imoa was actually writing that song to Samoa, to tell
mm,
Samoa, for Samoa, but I think mainly of it was for his wife Tutongi.
mm,
And it's because that what he did wrong, that he kind of felt guilty. And then when he said that Fafafonga Samoa Neo Imoa, oh, the tour, whatever. And
mm,
I think that when he said something in a song that I think it's in the chorus that was actually saying that man, I can't remember something about ole a fo lau or something like that. Lo basa. Yang ngai liao.
mhm.
And I think I remember my teacher was telling me about that over there in Leong and Asu that there's a draft or whatever
Like a
that's
current.
why once the current that
Mhm,
when Salamasina and Lady Naomi back in the days when they leave Bango, somehow they get to Upolu or in Upolu in no time. Versus coming back, it's really hard for them. So I guess going with the current and then coming back from Upolu to Kukuila with the current, that is kind of hard. And I think that he was referring that I think and then there's another verse that I was actually talking about that it was actually his family paying tribute and actually apology, some sort of like an apologetic from his family towards to what Imo did, like the walk he said Sema or Senga.
mhm.
So that's my interpretation. Like I was actually trying to remember the story that
Yeah,
to what he was telling us about it. But it's a good question about why didn't Singer had uh, a V or a
right.
tribute. But I think it's because of that Singer was one of the old tours back in the days that he
I
was
see.
doing so much bad things that a lot of people don't really want to hear about it. Versus Imoa during the time, I guess consider it at the modern time that Imoa actually was a modern warrior that thinking that, you know what, it's time to end this thing because you know what, I don't like this guy. So he just went to Tukukuila. So, but there's other interpretation. They said that ka'alonga
Yeah,
kamiki, it was just like
Yeah.
playing around, and then he punched him, and then he died, or anything like that.
I
So
reach.
yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. That's my interpretation of it.
No.
No, I like that. You've given me a perspective I've never seen before, and I like how you mentioned that
Yeah.
because it takes me to my thought process is going to Tamafainga, right? Is that his name? The
Hmm.
the one that was murdered before
Singer.
Right? Malitua took over. This is before the Kalale came, right? Yeah,
Oh,
Tamafainga, right? So again, there's no VE to remember him. He was murdered, but then it goes back to what you were saying. He was Isawa, right? They didn't like his leadership style, so he
right.
was lured into an ambush, tricked by women, and then eventually he was killed. But you brought up a good point, so that could be a reason. Like we don't remember, those what do you call them? Those types of leaders or those type of people, but we
Mhm.
glorify the ones that who did us justice by killing. But I kind of see where you're coming at. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, sir,
No, go
I
ahead,
hate to
Kalani.
say it because every time when I hear the name Tor, because every time that you see is a Mali Ko, which is a goddess name, and then they're always become a ruler, or they will always become one of the main people that actually
Hmm.
will become the main person. And I think that's the word Tor, being brave. In order for you to become a brave person in Tor, is that you're gonna have to commit all these kind of murders in order for you to conquer so many people, and then they'll be scared under you. And if he tells you what to do, they have to do it. And that's my own,
Mhm.
I mean, if there's, I'm pretty sure that, if we look at the incident that happened, it's not even far away. It's like just, to me, consider it as a recent incident. But I'm pretty sure that there are families out there that are actually related to Singa and also related to Imo as well, But
Mhm.
other than that, it's hard to, to listen to the song because I didn't even really know the meaning of it until my math teacher told the story, all that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I
Mhm.
guess it does make sense. So yeah.
Yeah, I have to ask, right? Because like trying to look up in the American Samoa Bar Association,
Mhm.
this is all that we see that's on there. There's not a lot of descriptions of
Yeah.
what really took place. So it got me to think, why is it that it's written down to where it's captured in the song? And I had to call my brother-in-law in Hawaii and ask, my sister, and she, because he's also a fanatic when it comes to history with our Samoans, and I have to remind myself, well, this was during a time when we were governed by the naval, right?
Hmm.
And so everything must have been at that time recorded. But why wasn't at this person, and he was the last person to be executed in American Samoa?
Hmm.
It had to be very important that he had to be executed. You should have had description to why and what took place in these events, but it wasn't. That his last words were recorded through a song, because that's really what our people did back then. Everything was oral interpretation and carried on through words of music and stories. And so, but at the same time, where is the story about Sema who passed away too as well, right? So
Mm,
Yeah.
that's my thoughts.
No, that's a good point. And like going back to the American Samoa Bar Association, just like what Kalani said, the American Samoa Bar Association doesn't say Sema, but the song that we hear today is Sema. But you see what was written in the court is Silla, right? Sella.
Hmm.
So there's several discrepancies. So, but that's what happens over time as the story's told. Someone heard a Sella, someone heard a Sema. And going back to the VE that Vaipapa just wrote recently, a couple of years ago, going back to like what Kalani said, Vaipapa also has his own version of what
Hmm.
happened. He says it was like a joke. The kids, the two were playing around. Wafa moi moi ia, kui kui wao. You know, they were play fighting, and he accidentally went too far and knocked him out. And going back to like you said, Leaso, where did Vaipapa get that from? Where did you
yeah,
get that he punched him and he
Right.
accidentally killed him?
yeah,
So a lot
yeah,
of these questions come, but then we always say, Samoa stories. There's so many different versions. We don't ever, we can't tell one family or one village or one island that your version is incorrect. We just have to acknowledge the different interpretations that are out there.
right.
Right. And I also want to bring this out was these are my notes, going through researching about Imoa, right? What you see in red is what I
Mhm.
copied and paste from the what's that tree? The
Yeah.
ancestry
Mm, that's pretty cool.
ancestry.com. And
Right,
so, yeah, so whoever put that information in there is saying that this is about him. He was blah blah blah, and giving his background. Very
Yeah.
different from Vaipapa's story on his music.
Yeah,
mm,
and I want to add on to this one, what you brought here. So this is my family's version, and for our viewers, I'm related to Imoa. Imoa is my grandfather's half brother. and this is what our families always shared. So, like I said, I'm open to other viewers and their perspective. I've studied so many different versions, and I'm open to it. I like to hear their versions, but this is what my family shares. So, this is our family. You know, we're the best family from Mua, and so we know, what happened to Imoa. And I didn't get to copy the Imoa's actually his family on, because he didn't live with our best side. He lived with the mom side. But on YouTube under Vaipapa's video, you'll see his actual family, and on the other side, they're saying, I remember my grandmother coming home crying, telling the story. So they're sort of giving some descriptions of how they went through, and like Kalani said, we want to hear their stories, and I don't know their story, and I've reached out to them numerous times, because I'm related to them, but I have not heard any word from them. So for our viewers, I'm reaching out to you, Imoa's family, you know
Right.
here
That's
I
pretty
am,
cool.
Imoa's brothers, Imoa's brother's name is Tasia Afe, who I'm now taking, that title. So I'm the grandson. So I am also a Pese. So
Wow, that's
reaching
pretty
out
cool.
if you'd like to share the details that we missed. So, um, but then, I'm going back to the question that we asked: why do we honor those you know who offended the other? Right? We know Imo murdered Sema, but we had this VE. But then, a recent case that happened in American Samoa, and Kalani, tell me if you know about this. Xiao Mao Jr., right? Um, and for our viewers who know this story, I'm not very familiar with it, other than I know that he murdered a cop, near the courthouse somewhere around 2010 timeframe. Um, I seen a lot of support for him. Someone that murdered a police officer, and it sort of reminds me of Imo's story. Um, where's the support for the family of the victim, right? But I see a lot of pastors, villagers, a lot of great things said about this gentleman right here who murdered a cop. It reminds me of the Imo story. We There's a lot of praise for this gentleman here, but for our viewers, if you're more familiar with this, please share your understanding of the story. From my what I've read is he was attending maybe a family member's court case, and I'm not sure. Maybe he was disappointed of the ruling or whatever happened, and he took his firearm and shot one of the police officers. So, and I think at the time, Governor Gongyola was in place, and I think the Fono wanted to bring up the death penalty again. But then again, we
Yeah.
said no. 1939 anymore. We will not bring that back up. Like, we will not revive the death penalty. So, are you
It's good
familiar with?
that if you don't, then when Leaso was brought up, that was a good one that you brought up a good point about. I guess during that time, the laws because of the naval that was actually taking care of our court system at the time, and I think that there were no other options per se that when somebody committed heinous crime or murder stuff like that, I think it was just eye for an eye, and that was the only law that I think that
Mhm.
that was given to our people that if you do that, then you're gonna die. But isn't it?
Mhm.
My question is, our viewers, if you don't mind, um, me asking this, wasn't it that Malia Mofili the second, the one that actually said that we need to take this away because no
Mhm.
Christianity at the time. But
Mhm.
and then back to what brother Toshi was talking about with the case with the detective that actually got shot. Um, rest in peace to him and then all that stuff. And for people that was actually praising the suspect. But I mean, if it's true, but I will just go ahead and put it out there. I mean, there's sometimes that our culture we really take um, disrespect in a very very critical way to where that when somebody disrespect your family there's always going to be some circumstances that the family's going to have to retaliate, not only to the based on how it was treated at the time. And if that's the case, I won't go furthermore about it. But I think that maybe that's probably why that the family that was actually, the suspect that actually shot the detective at the time is because of the disrespect. If
Mm.
that's why that they're replacing him or stuff like that. But if there's anybody in the view that actually know the story more about it, we would like to know more about it. But our people is, when it comes to local Christian, ole ngu'u, ole a'inga, which is the number one thing. And if somebody disrespect a'inga, that's more something that they're gonna take serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, to me, I think that's probably why what happened, and that the family actually come up, and then they had to take matters in their hands to where maybe the family was actually disrespected, and you know, regardless of anything that based on the law that the law enforcement have to take, matters in their hands to where that they have to uh, apprehend somebody due to somebody that committed something. But so our Samoan ways that there are ways that we have to go about. But other than that, I think that's one good thing that I was thinking about. That I think when they also was talking about why, um, I guess that's the time that when the naval was actually in control of our court system and our justice system as well at the time. That
Mm.
eye for an eye was the only thing that was given to our people. No fair court, no fair judge, or anything that will tell them that you can do this, serve and everything. You commit murder, that's what you're going to get. And I don't know. Once again, if there's anybody out there in our viewers that I can actually uh, validate that, if it was Mali Mofili II that actually requested that tour, that take this off, and then because our people Okaka Okua at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my
No, it's a good perspective. Did you have
Yeah.
anything to add on there, Lasso?
I was also thinking, could it also be that there's so many files, just like how we had talked about a couple weeks ago, how there's a lot of videos, old footage of our people and stories of our people that still kept that building, I believe, where KBZK TV is at, or still is, and they're about to get rid of it. They haven't digitalized those video cassettes or whatever.
Right.
I'm wondering if that's the same with old documents from back then, is that they haven't scanned or uploaded all of those old documents to have for everybody to have access in the American Samoa Bar Association, that we just have this little snippet that's just typed in there but nothing else. I'm wondering if just everything is just kept in a file or was probably burnt somewhere, that they haven't had the
mm,
chance to upload the rest of the information that we need,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I would find like some of the court cases is it's interesting if you Google it, you'll find more details of it, which means, but when you click on that link, it's a broken link. But then when you go back to American Samoa Bar Association, it's no longer in there. But what that tells
mm,
you is at one point the full story was in there, you know, but for some reason it was shortened. And then you question why are some of the critical stories, to our Samoan people, especially Kukuila, why did you decide to take out the critical piece? But then, if you look closely on American Samoa Bar Association, it says if you want more details on this court case, email us or call us, and we'll give you the fuller version. So there is a method for you to attain, you know, the full story that's beyond what's already written. So I mean that's another avenue, to pursue. But then you question, like what you just said, why not leave the full version out there? If it's public records, it's public records, right? It should be available to the public. I
Yeah.
should not FOIA anything, right? I shouldn't request, special permission for you to publish the full court case, right? It's public records.
yeah.
But
Well, maybe
Dr.
because of the pride of our people. And you know how our people are. And when it comes down to families and stuff like that, we always take care of our family and stuff. But when it comes to stuff like that, information can always lead to where that families are going to be going against each other's.
Yeah,
And that's my thinking,
That's true
thinking
too.
that that if we put that out in the public, who knows, maybe generations from later on, we'll go back and look at these informations and then somebody's going to take it the wrong way to where that, oh, so it's true that your family did this, their family did this, and then you know how it is. Our
Yeah.
people are. It's very prideful. We're so prideful when it comes to our families, and I see the respectful way of it. But the thing of it is that I guess that's why that you know court system, based on the court system here in the States and in our own ways in Samoa. Uh, thankful that we have the Matai system as well. But I think
Yeah.
that's probably what it is the respectful way of keeping families and everybody, not to think of those things to where that it's going to bring chaos and to where that it's not going to be a very good, perfect picture or it's going to be so bad. But I think that's
Mm.
probably why. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
No,
that's what
you're
I'm
you're
thinking about.
you're exactly right. And I share this story that's unique to my family. And my dad shares this one event that happened, and it involved a murder, by one of our family members, and it didn't sound true to me because sometimes you question the stories that your family shares with you. Is there any legitimacy in, or was it something made up? And I went and digging in American Samoa Bar Association, I came across the story, and I just thought like, oh my god, my dad was telling the truth. But then again, going back to what you were saying, it just said, the offense. That's all it says. It's very shorter than what Imoa stories is. All it says is, these are the two names who were involved, in the murder. But then it doesn't say any other details of what happened. But I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying. We don't want to inflame the situation. Maybe the two families that occurred shook hands. Mangalo. Being a faisi ifonga. It's forgiven. Samoans, when once
Hmm.
something's forgiven, you let it go. Let's not leave it out there in the open for the rest of the public to continue to stir up, and then the families will have wars. So thank you, Brother Kalani, for bringing that perspective. Yeah.
Mm.
No.
Or it could be one more thing. There was not enough money for funding to save all those files.
Now you're speaking politics. Oh my God, that's right.
So I
Yeah.
think we covered the Emo story, and right? Did we leave
Yes.
anything
Yeah.
out? Oh yeah, and for anyone that's interested in listening to the story, if you're not familiar, just go listen to Fafong Samoa, listen to the song, and then we'll share what Kalani was mentioning earlier. It was an apology from Imoa before his execution. So it was his last words, um, apologizing to the people, the family, and the villages he came from, apologizing to Sinma, and all that stuff. Okay, before we move on, I'm going to read some of these comments.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. From High Chief, no more kava for me. Trying to keep Mike out at bay.
Good for you.
Lavon, Talafa Lava, Pulse of Polynesia, Talafa, Lavon, thank you for coming on our podcast. Yeah, my Rich. Finally, I get to catch a live. Malo Soifua, Pulse of Polynesia. Yeah, Talafa Tufoi, yeah, Rich. And it's like you gotta patent your stories to make it valid. Yeah, that's so true. So we have so many stories out there, but like we said, that's the beauty of the Fasamua is we have to encourage others to tell your stories because we have so many people who are afraid to share their stories because they know what was so popular out there and they're afraid to share their versions because they know that people will make fun of them or a lot of people will say, you're stupid, your version is wrong. And we shouldn't attack people for bringing their versions out because you don't know that piece of information may contain one small snippet that will make your version complete because there's so many stories that my family has and I'm like that doesn't make sense, I'm missing something, and then I'll hear someone else's version, I'm like aha, that's the piece I was missing. Your story is kind of different than how we tell it, but there's a piece that you offered that now completes my story. So we encourage others to share your stories with us, and it's not for us to ridicule or say you're wrong or who's wrong, because well, we don't know who's right, and whatever story that your family retains, that truth is true to you, and let it be, but don't ever feel that, oh, that person's version is correct and I should quit telling my story. So that's all I want to
Mm.
offer.
Nobody can tell a story right. It takes a whole group of people to tell every interpretation to where that we can always bring it down to one story. And I think
Yeah.
that's why our community should always share. And I will always bring Brother Moni. Brother Moni, I always say that's the beauty of our people. The
Yeah.
beauty of our people is actually not only that we can share, but most of our stories comes from our music. Even though some people cannot tell, but when they sing it, the soul comes out, and then when
Mm,
the story comes out, there will be somebody writing you down. So yeah, you're right, brother Tussin.
Mhm.
So let's share it together with our viewers, and if anybody out there that can actually add on to it, we are very grateful to at least take some of the information from y'all too. Thank you.
yep. So I think we've covered him all. So I think we're ready for another one.
All right. So the next one is the Tutuila star mounds.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I guess another word is called Tia Seu Lupe.
T.S. Lupe. Yep. Kalani knows a lot about this. Go ahead, Leaso.
Oh, not really.
All right. So, from what I understand with this findings, this was created. It was more of I believe, an activity, a game that was held with the chiefs and the villagers. And so, here's just a little picture of how it looked like, and then let me share another image of how the game works. So let me pull that up real quick. It's very interesting. We didn't have rugby back then or cricket, but we had this.
T.S. Lupe. Pigeon catching on star mounds. Yep.
All right. So the way that the game works, and let me just read up some of my notes. Okay, so the game took place on a star-shaped earthen mounds, usually built on ridges so pigeons could see them easily. The small grass huts, which you see on there, were built on the arms of the mound, each with a hunter hiding inside.
Mm,
And so chiefs and high ranking men were the main participants. Pigeon catching was both a sport and a chiefly ritual. So the preparation, chiefs prepare for months, raising decoy pigeons from a young age. Villages trained men, built the mounds, and organized feasts. Second, the decoy birds were released. Trained pigeons were tossed into the air. And so let me show another image that shows this in display. Um, let me get that real quick. Okay, so the trained pigeons were tossed into the air. They circled above the mound, attracting wild pigeons flying in the area. Now, the hunters in position. Each hunter sat hidden in a hut with a long bamboo pole, a small net tied to the end, an eye shade to hide the glint of their eyes from birds.
hmm.
And so, snaring the pigeon, as the wild pigeons followed the decoys and landed nearby, hunters sprang up quickly. With a swift movement, they extended the bamboo pole and netted the pigeon mouth flight or on approach. So that's really how the game was played. Let me see what else I have. Some pigeons were eaten immediately. Some were kept alive in cages to be trained as future decoys, and others were distributed as symbols of chiefly generosity, which was a part of, we talked about the Asu massacre. And so
Yeah.
that's how the game was played.
Okay. And I just want to cover this real quick, and to return back to Asu. So this game, of course, Tia Lupe, we know it's the game of the Chiefs. So it's not a game for ordinary folks or commoners, right? It's the Chiefs game. And going back to our last discussion, what happened in Asu, one of the assumptions or one of the speculations was the Chiefs. We knew the Chiefs traded their valued possessions, these treasures, these pigeons. We know the Chiefs gave the pigeons to the Frenchmen, and in honor of that. But then when the issue occurred where one of the Samoan men got on the French ship and he was unruly, and they tossed them overboard, and the Samoans were now getting riled up. So they knew that they were in danger, and then the Samoans, I mean, the Frenchmen, in order for them to teach the Samoans, how strong these weapons are, they tossed those pigeons that the chiefs gave them, and they shot them with their firearms. That was their show of demonstration to tell the Samoan people, "This is what we have. You've never seen this weapon before." So we're tying the pigeon game, or how valuable this the pigeons were, to the Samoan chiefs. So now that all that's been said, the question I have for our viewers is, do you have a photo, Lasso, of what an actual one looks like?
Let's see.
Yeah. And while you're looking for an actual one, the question I have for our viewers is, do you believe that those star mounds were actually used for for pigeon snaring? Because if you actually look at the star mounds themselves, it's hard to believe that that is what they were used for. So what Asso mentioned was sort of an assumption, right? It's sort of an assumption because most of our Samoan people will see these mounds and they automatically say it's pigeon snaring. So it became the popular belief that that's what they were used for. So the question I have for our viewers is, for those who are familiar with the star mounds, if you see these images, there you go. If you see them, you question: was it really, ongikia ngimea? Is it really a platform for pigeon snaring, or something else? And the reason why I bring that question up, because there's an actual drawing of what the Tongan platform looks like.
Mhm.
And being Tonga and Samoa share a lot of similarities in tradition and culture, you would think the Samoan mounds would look like the Tongan mounds. So that's the only reason why I sort of bring that up to question is, why does the Tongan, mound not look like the Samoan mound, right? And this is the one in Kongo. And see, it's sort of like almost like a pyramid with the significantly different, right? Definitely doesn't look like our mound. So just a question for our viewers, and then and you can throw out the other possibilities that they rolled out. Lasso, what did they roll out? The archaeologists.
All right, so the archaeologists are saying that, it can't be a burial site because during their excavation, they didn't find any skulls, bones, or whatever remains in there, so that was eliminated. And they said it cannot be a residential platform because there was no post holes or artifacts of houses that was likely there, so that was also eliminated. It was not a fortification where they were used for in case of battles or whatever,
Hmm.
because some of the ridges but many too low, and so there's a lot of things that didn't show that it was for defense type of mechanism. um it was not ritual ceremonial because supported by oral traditions, feasts, and seasonal gathering, that it just didn't make sense with that platform there. So, but a lot of it makes sense as far as the pigeon game goes with
Okay.
the chiefs and the royalty, because, and it's weird because like just watching some of the videos on Coconut TV and other websites that I've checked, there's so many of those sightings of these star-like type rock setting in Western Samoa and Savai'i, and there's like 80 plus of those around in Apia and some in other parts of the villages. But that just says like, man, that must have been like a what you call like a sport event in that one area where there's 80 plus of those
Yeah.
findings. And then on top of that, there's a lot in Savai'i, but they're all hidden. Even the villagers are saying, "Don't go near that area because that's very sacred." So
Hmm.
what's so sacred about it? There's got to be something about it that makes it sacred, other than yeah, it was has to do with the Chiefs being a part of that game. But I don't know. There's more to the story. I don't know. But here's a comment.
Okay. At, no, doesn't make sense. It would be used for to get pigeons. We have hills and mountains on Tutuila, probably a way to connect to the gods. Okay, see, interesting perspective.
Hmm.
Thank you, AT. What do you think
Welcome,
so far, Kalani?
Cesar.
Now you've got a snippet of it. Did he have some kind of perspective? There's no wrong
Not
answer.
really. I know. I mean, I don't want to say anything that is way off the subject about it, but the thing of it is, I, I heard of it. I heard of the story of the Guadalupe.
Yeah.
Only the Chiefs can orchestrate it, this kind of game, and they're the only one that can be in these grounds. But that's the only thing that I can remember. I guess because to me, I'm just guessing that a lot of people don't are not, they're not supposed to be in that area. Maybe because that they do ceremonies or rituals before they even begin the game,
Mm,
or some sort of ceremonies or something that they have to do before. Because if it's just chiefs that actually are only the ones that could perform this, I'm pretty sure that they're probably going to have some special ceremonies or rituals to perform before they even go on with this or starting with the game. So that's my guess to where that I guess because the grounds are sacred, they don't want these grounds to be, for people just to mingle around and everything. So my thing is, it's our people are visionaries. They vision things, and if they
mm,
vision an area to where that they have to do these games, as far as the Guadalupe, wow, that's pretty cool for them. That maybe this is the only spot that they were calling for to become the spot that they can actually do the game and perform this. And I guess they're the only ones that can orchestrate this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my understanding from what Sis Lasso was talking about and actually telling the story. And I heard about the Guadalupe, but didn't really further deep into understanding why. So, but when you're telling the story about the areas, and I guess it does tell some privacy of it that only the chiefs can only attain these things. So, yeah, uh, that's the only thing I can add on about it. So,
yeah. No, I like that philosophy. I didn't think about that mindset. Kind of like how we do things today. You know, say a prayer before our event. But if it's more than just a prayer, if it's something so sacred in nature that our chiefs back then are not like chiefs today, right? Chiefs back then, you don't ever how would you say it? The ground is you don't walk the same ground that they do, right? So
right.
it's sacred ground for a reason. Yeah, Talafalava
Yeah.
Susanna, thank you for joining us, and I know you've
Thanks,
read
Susanna.
about our star mount, so we'll turn it over to you.
So sorry. I always have technical these technology stuff, but I don't want to intervene the nice discussion on the topic of Singalupe. But I think what comes in mind when we hear of how important the games of Samoa, and there's songs written about the Singalupe, but something that ties into how the Chiefs are meeting their lovers through these games, because it's something that e makai umai ka ngaka o le
Mm,
move.
absolutely.
And then you know how important and how important it was. It not only brings the villages, and because of the distinctive group of people,
Mm,
it somehow I could relate to it. I le mako ngu i kua I vakia wai o la me mako e se o le fua o
mm,
nga o ka ngaka ko fia e o lunga le maunga i le mea ngai fe mai e o i lunga i ngā. Not everyone goes there,
I see.
but o le fo i la malanga upu. There's, kele or I think that was more of cultural tie. It it almost seemed like a boring thing to us these days because no one is doing it anymore. You know what I
Mm,
mean? But the uniqueness of how the Seunga Lupe was something that everyone was looking forward to. Like what we were
mm,
talking about last night. O le whaukasipi o le NFL ka ko Samoa.
right.
But with this Seunga Lupe, it not only brings the distinctive group of people that does it, like the Chiefs, And when it's passing down, these are like the very selective people everybody look up to. And with that, it not only brings them together as a community, but at the same time, they're building language and they're pula ko kala, seule ngalwe kanga, seule mangu kanga ile ngalua. It's
Mm,
like olayo se alaiva something that if I say metaphorically relate to how the Samoan people were live. It was it's like um it's a trend, but a trend that was rich. It's the capacity of having this Seungalupe. It was like rich to the culture because o mai e ka ngaka e whaere ka pua inga
mm-hmm.
e ka pua ia kulalo mo i lalo le malai.
Right.
Ah, so in detail, like what he says. Oh, anyway, o Susana, she wangi and in detail of what you guys are putting in topics. I think it's always she kuangangi, yeah. We read about it. We didn't really go in deep intense really of, but that's how I know. Like I mean, we've learned about the Seunga Lupe Samoa Kimio ole aya. Pe o ka alonga nga pe e kau wā
Mm-hmm.
ia chiefs makas e su e fo i la kua ia su e la ko mana mea e mi tai ka ngaka e ka pua i ngu e fa fau ni upo le ngana. They built alanga upu out of respect ili ka alonga. So ele so nga lo isi ele
Mm,
so nga se ua ele isi. It's not e o mai makupulanga ya e o se e iai lava kupulanga kofia e ia ainga kofia matai makangaka ya. But it's it's what brings them. So ai longo ko fai ngai ya so ore ko se
yeah.
on fu o kukuila i nga o iwakia. But o le mga o le whamkalanga o le story way for the pese o le se ngā rupere.
Yeah.
Just recently when I heard le punia lava o le loko i o kusinga o pe Samoa al punia lava man ko inga almost every song, and one of the song it has to do le pese Samoa fo I al punia lava e whakakau not only se ngā rupe but the ka alonga o kaka Samoa e
Yeah.
if ka wela ko if fiti
Yeah.
if fiti fiti like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out any English term to that.
Agility. We mentioned it
If fa
earlier.
fiti
Agility.
fiti.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wanna go back to what you said. Like, you bring up an interesting point, and that's kind of what we're actually not really trying to tie it to the Kiesa Selupe, but we also want to. It's mainly the formation of these rocks, and that's if we can
Mm.
bring up. There was two comments, that came up, and they brought up an interesting point. Okay, so we have the altars, right? This is like another thought process, altars of worship, and then someone else brought something about constellations.
Ah,
Yeah, so maybe connections to the constellations. So some of the studies I've seen out there, they're saying the formations are somehow the way they're organized are similar to the constellations. But like Sister Susana was saying, aside from Kiyosu Lupa, that we had other games. Like we had, whatever game it was, the Fitball, Fitball's kids were playing, Leatongi, you know,
yeah.
that's one of the games. Then we knew that our Samoan people had wrestling. We knew that they had boxing. So those are other
The
games, are as possibilities of the use of this land. But then the other thing I wanted to mention was what Kalani said, the worshiping part. So we know that there at one point our people worship the octopus, Oleakua, Orfe'e. So if you look at the formation of the rocks, it almost looks
it's
like
not
the outline almost looks like the octopus. So just throwing out different varieties. So, but I still want to acknowledge the Kiase Lupe, even though I don't agree that that is. But that's one of the leading uh, beliefs. So, um, just for our viewers, it's worth a discussion, and I wanted to throw it out there. So
I think
interesting.
one of the
Yeah.
I think one of the Seungalupe unique story ay sa mo tay ay sa mo li Seungalupe malia ko mamangya fainga. It was written in books. But uli mga ye because sa o kamali o ili kapingang o Seungalupe o kanga ka you guys talk about the environment and how because he was saying malupeli imako ikapinga lino fuanga
Mm-hmm.
ikapo ia au ali ima o kupu makamali o la kumuea e ka useu o tamali I le fa Samoa ngakusi e kusi ai historia I kala fa solo pico pe o I ka alonga mi se ala se malupeli
Mm-hmm.
but e mai e fe mai a mo lupe e au mai but you know how it is that the uniqueness o le lupe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny for ele ngaka kapinga ile ngu e o fo ile ngo fuanga e fai ile se ngale because if me ile ka si se so fai ai e kapinga in months
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah,
days and
compare.
months e prolong ile ele kapinga ngole ore ka alonga le it's so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, because leading up to it, like part of it, you're dealing with the migration, the pigeons migration. So the Samoan people knew what type of the time frame where the migration comes, so they timed their events for that. So to your point, the preparation may take months. Ya le ke mi lea ka koe ka palolo le wai loa ka koe yo vai ke mi mai palolo so we know the time frame, so we're preparing for that. So kind of like what you said, we know the time frame that pigeons come annually, so then you have months to prepare, and then that's the time where everyone goes to these events. It's when they land in Samoa.
Ciao. It's very interesting.
Yeah, did we have any other comments, any other suggestions out there, Leaso?
I wanted to add one more thing that just came to mind, right? Like in front of our house, like so one of the studies was it can't be a burial because um the our anthropologist realizes that our Samoan people bury their loved ones close to their homes, right?
I see.
And now there's one significant thing that I just realized, just came to mind. Like in front of our house in Malailoa, we have it's like a burial area right in front of our house. And our ancestors are buried kind of like the same formation as how the rocks were stacked for those games or whatever it was used for. Our ancestors were, you would think like back in the day they'll just bury them and then cover with dirt, that's it, right? But they had rocks stacked on top to make a formation of, to show that this is where they were buried.
I
But
see.
the fact that they used these stones to build that monument for their burial, it kind of makes me wonder, I wonder too, because it's the same type of technique that was used to build that star of formation for this platform. And I'm wondering, like, I know it was the same setting because that's pretty much the same style. Was it just a trend to use the same type of setting of, material, or was it a significant way of a ritual respect type way that they use those rocks, the same as they would with a loved one? And then you
Hmm.
see a Matai, their burial, they stack those rocks up like a pyramid all the way to the
Yeah,
top.
go all the way up. Hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of questions to that. Like, but yeah, I
Yeah.
just have a lot of questions in my mind wondering about that, you know.
Yeah, and the reason why we brought up the star mounds, because a lot of people don't know that there's so many star mounds across in Samoa, and you probably can't tell where they are because they're overgrown with brush. But with technology, we have lidar technology, which they can move this equipment and it shoots to the satellites, and then it now projects an image of what that formation of rocks looks like on the ground. So now they have these aerial footage, and it says, wow, there's like 50 or 60 plus rock formations in Kukuila, and we don't know they exist because they're overgrown with brush, but you can only
Yeah.
tell by satellite imagery from the lidar. Okay.
Hmm.
I see a comment that just popped up. What was that
Yeah.
one? Was there any records of the actual builders of these star mounds? I don't. I
There's
don't
a,
know. I don't know.
when Leaso mentioned about in Samoa, come to really think about it, if you compare to any other country, nga o kang Samoa, kamu lako tangata maliwing, au kafa, because it was more like ole better practice le Samoa. Somehow it has evolved over time now. Swing on. But with some families, they choose that la ko e kamua kako kaluayale kako lo fai kako kanka. Marikal ko ngunga del Samoa. It was more like they believe, we believe, kak Samoa. It's to have them around, they will prevent the spirit from causing trouble for the family.
Mm,
You know,
keep them close.
yeah, pero la ko protecting si ay ko la nga re o may ko fangwa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so unique ya kero ole mo ko piko isilia nga makwa unika akilia o mangua. My first time going to Manua. Kwa ima ya may mangua may mangua may yili do pula le mag. But it's crazy. We don't want to think about those stuff. We don't want to go there, but we don't want to think about ourselves in. But if you may mako o malanga o fisa o ngamo ya sia o ngayo ke vai o le ai ngama ko ngofo e muli mau uma fo ya kanka e lai lo story ni menga ko vai
Mm.
fola o mai ele fango ke la o ke le lo ai sa vali lo ya wa kulo.
Ne lava lo faku kua savali ma Jesus. Oh.
No, ele ise kulo nga o wa o ele ise kulo. O le ke falo ko le au kulo ye ko luma. Au wa au ma dia ma ko le kulo wa ma dia. But I'm
Yeah.
saying those
Ano.
people in Manua ma ko secret ha biya nga ka kamangua.
Yang
At
alai
least
ba ai mai mangua. O lai ba ai mai mangua ngai ke la ko se rupe o ai do me mai se rupe. Ko ai ba
Sunday.
kia se lo fa lo mangua o ke se rupe o i mangua.
Sunday. O bere fa ko awa o fangu o ki e luma ala o le alwa ku ya kulo le kali sia le sa mani ko ke o va pe o mo ka vale o ko kulo wa i se fa ko ki. But
No,
it's o
I
le
like what
pele nga
you.
wa ia.
It's funny what you mentioned, but a lot of Samoa people, it's the respect we have for Mangua, but at
Wow,
the
for
same
the
time,
thing.
it's our own belief that makes us afraid of Mangua, because like we have Mangua roots, and my sister tells the story all the time, because my grandfather came from Mangua, and he's buried in Vailoa. So now my Mangua family are buried in Vailoa, but you know what the Vailoa people say? They don't want to go by that burial ground because Mangua people, they're so feai, and then like it's offensive. You say that's my great
We very kala
grandfather,
ngoro pero ke mai
but
de.
you know, why would you say something like that about my great grandfather? You just assume
It's how
we're evil
it's
spirit, right?
crazy.
Yeah. Just not to go off subject, but if we think about it, remember back in the days when Tui Tonga, le ke mire ana fa ma vai e kui konga ya kui mangua.
Yeah.
There was one wish that kui konga wanted to take before he left Mangua, right? And that wish was he asked Tui Mangua, I wanna wo fia ka ele le vai sa, o le kala kui mangua nga fai ai, le ai.
Yeah.
E re ma
Yeah.
fai nga e ka ele le vai sa. But what did kui konga did? He did it
Alwa.
anyway. When he saw Kui Mangua was out of sight, what happened? He
You
died
die.
immediately when he died. Yeah,
Yeah.
but if it wasn't for Kui Mangua telling Kui Konga's, I guess the bodyguards to go back, alue oe koe usu le pese, sui le usu le pese, nga usu e lo le pese nga koe kuma e Kui Konga. When Kui Konga came back from there, that's when he knew. this is something that any Polynesian islands in the Pacific
No,
would never mess with because Kuikonga
it's
is
not.
one of the powerful goddess in the Pacific. I mean, if there's anybody that can validate that, but that's my belief that that's why.
Yeah,
So wala ko siya lupe o sui siya ko.
yeah. I think the story you're sharing, Bonnie, it's
Yeah.
about like the song you hear in several Polynesian islands outside of Samoa at funerals, right? And you question why would these other islands sing this song of forgiveness, right? Or begging Tui Manua, Tui Manuai, Tui Manuai, Tui Manuai, like this praying. This is not Tui Manua is not your king of your island, but then why are you singing this song, right? So even though these are oral traditions to Samoa, but then these people's islands are singing this at their funerals even today, which then you question the Tui Manua story must be true for these other islands to be singing this at their funerals. Because there's some islands, some villages in Samoa that also sing this praise to Tumanua. So why are these other islands singing this praise to Tumanua? So then there must have been some connection and some truth to
Yeah,
to his role, and kind of like what you're alluding to. That same
man,
story.
it's see. I guess that's why what it leads down to where we're so off subject. But just one thing that you just kind of remind me, brother. Every time nga follow follow Lisua, every time after a Sua is finished, you will always hear the Gaka follow Sua. The first goddess name that comes out of their mouth is Wi Manguai. And then the second goddess is Wiya Ahai. And the
Mm.
third one is Malia Kwai. Maybe, So these are probably like one of the dominant goddess
Yeah.
that we know
And someone
from our
said
island. So,
that's why it's called the Motusa, right?
Yeah.
Daily Bible Readings 2024. That's why it's called Motusa. So thanks to our viewers for just sharing it. Thank you, Brother Kalani and Sister Susana, for bringing, that. So,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong, venturing a little bit out of our subjects, but, because they all tie together and, so it's still worth mentioning. Okay, so we visited that one. Which one are we going to hit next?
All right, so we're gonna talk about Fatu and Futi.
Okay.
Mm.
Fatu Mafuti. Okay. Let's do that.
The legend.
Susanga ofeko ui isa mo.
So, ewan ko, usa man mo pa iya daw vakia.
Bakia. And Ia
alam mo, oras
Kula,
sa mga ngongo.
Oi!
Kula, and Malaya Loa. So we got two east side and we got two west side. Okay. All right. So for those in
I don't know
Tutuila,
much of the story of Fatima Futi.
yeah. Go ahead, Les.
No,
Malay?
all I know is that were they just a couple and they were trying to run away and okay, that's all I know. Love story.
Kalani, did you have something? I thought you had mentioned something.
Oh no, I just like what Sis was saying. That's the only thing that I know of. It was just the two couple that were together that fell in love from, and then they sailed from Apollo. Somehow their canoe capsized and they had to swim from trying to get to make it ashore, and then all of a sudden they died. And
Mm.
they were, good thing. I guess they were right next to each other, and I guess they turned into those rocks. That's all I know about. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think we all share the same understanding of what we've heard so far. And what we wanted our segment, because we're on the top of the hour, was we wanted to carry what we know, like our normal stories and some of the modern stories, but then we also wanted to cover this segment as one of our legends, and we have like three
It's a
legends,
legend.
you know,
Yeah.
to cover. So Fatu Mafuti is a beautiful story that we've heard, right? The couple
Mm.
that were seeking refuge and they made it to Tutuila, and this is where supposedly capsized, and that's where they are today. Um, what was your understanding of this story, Susanna?
I only Pacific lafoi. Ikaw sa ngalay ko vanga iya. Iyak. kau esema oi konyola nga
Hmm.
bakuli Pacific sa faya kui oi sa ikukuila. And that was my first time. Isa oi falong ka ko istorya ka ko ai oi fa makala lea o nga mai lo ka. But isa or fast fusi it's a legend. I think you know how elim suka ko ilopi mo ipi sao. But mi ngai ka oi o kala fatu makala fa'afango wakako because sa kalanga it was the story of a tale on eternal love endures my ili two lovers siya nga liu ile liu maunga ilu
Yeah.
mo fak mo fa ingoya fak mo fuki but you know it's like le poko foi o kakasamoa e whakula ko kala fo I whakakawi landforms ma mea because these rock formations was very unique I lumo whakmafuki waka o yale ngu waka o yalu mai ngā ngu ule au ka wha maku o
Hmm.
whatu mafuki ka ruaia maunga ngai lua but because of that story you know, lamb quite sa Leah story nga. And it was more like one, it was like a sacrifice of the two lovers that they didn't want to depart one from one another. Waliw maakwela, but it was more of something that wa wai ikangaka. It pia o i Guam, a fully story, love story, i land form of Guam. It's got our Lover Point. We've been to that place in it's called Lover Point, but because they're my also ilaloli lover le kinging a wakuli mai o e musun lang wa kamari chief and for kama falang. But because they wanted him to but the land forms if I'm a story al Pacifica. But one of the uniqueness of our own into Tutuila was this Fakumafuki. So I will never get away from what you guys just start talking about it because I know that is like the one story that passed down to us and it sounds so identical.
Yeah. And then again, for our villagers, from there, you may have a different perspective too. But we
Mm.
love sharing these stories because we always ask when you hear our ancestors or our elders share these stories, there's always a meaning to it, right? There's what's the
Mm.
meaning, that the underlying meaning of these stories, and that, to me, it
Er,
was about the love, right? The dedication to each other, all the way to your last moments, was you never abandoned each other, right? You were there. It's kind of
Right,
like, and you hear that in a lot of our stories. It just shows, what true love is, what our people had respect for each other, the relationships.
right,
So
right.
I wonder about the people who live in that village, right? They've lived there for many years. There must have been some type of story passed down to that family that lives in that area.
Le au mama.
That you, yeah, a lot of times, like our people, we share stories, but there are times where they decide to hold back and only keep it within their own family. So I'm wondering, what stories are you guys holding back from everyone that we don't know about, other than this is Fatu and Futi, right? Because there's a reason why you named those two rocks. Of all the rocks that are sitting on parts of the islands, you decide to name these two rocks. So there's got to be some story or some myth behind that that's more than what we know. So
yeah, there's one that's in Leone, Africa. It's
Le niwa
Leone.
bebe.
Yeah, so that's another one, right? That one also has another story. So any types of rocks, formation that's sort of separate from the even Mount Alava has its own story, right? So there's so many different rock formations that has a story. But also the other question I wanted to ask, when we were talking about this story right here, being langa upu, ukukuila lava ia o mo merkalaanga dea, fatum futi, is there any proverbs or any words that are used in our speeches that come from their story that we know of? And that's for our audience too, our viewers. If there's any words that came out of this love story that we use today in our laumas, feel free to share that with us. I don't know. I'm just questioning. Maybe there is, but it'd be unique if someone says, "Yeah, here's one that." it came from their story. Because most of our alanga upus, they come from different stories. But I was always interested in if there was anything that arrived from these Kukuila stories. Okay.
Mm,
Yeah.
The question I want to ask too is like, are people like to tell stories? Because the little kids to keep them entertained because they didn't have PlayStation or, by the way, I'm trying to sell
no.
sell my son's PlayStation here who's leaving to college. So whoever wants to buy it, let me know. Um, so these are probably a way to entertain these kids back then, I guess. But my question is, what was the story? What was the lesson behind the story? What's the moral of the story that you're trying to teach the kids?
Yeah.
You know?
No, you're right. And to answer your question, so my grandmother, um, this is what she used to do. She would always, after we bathe, it was a mua thing. She just fuck up, after we shower, she would then just woo us, just from the fungu Samoa. And I didn't like the smell of it, but then there's something about it. That was the routine. Every evening she would, put that oil on us, on all the kids. And then the lights were off, there was no TV. And then she will say, fangongo time, or, like
Mm,
stories, and she would just go on and on, like, and but I've forgotten so many. But then that's one of the experiences I cherish. You just mentioned Leaso. You will never have that experience anymore because our elders
today.
aren't spending that time with us like that because we're so glued to our TVs and our iPhones. But like, is there anyone else that is having that experience with their grandmother to that actually sits down and tell these stories? And I wish when I was young, of course, I was probably in fourth or fifth grade, but I still remember that, that unique moment. That was the old Fasamo. That's what those
How
families did, during their before they go sleep. It was that, and then Umalo. Then she would always listen to the 2AP radio station, even though we were in Kukuila. She was always tuning into the 2AP radio station, so I always remember those things from my childhood. So yeah, interesting perspective there.
I think today was yeah, I fika ko grandma bill o grandma way give me well I kia grandma. Wa kere for story o le loe e grandma si vai kimi e pa waso i o le uniqueness nga o le au mai nga e ko inga malo mako. Wai sha if we were raised our lives back home, we still recall that one and more moments that's why e fia kako wa o kimi fai fangu. Ia wa ke minga le lai ki ka ko e kari kongo ma me ia ka ko
Right.
story ia ka o mai o whaangongo e o mar whaangongo lo ma kua ma pese a ma po ale ka mo whai wha amoe a kuroa ma oi wale la waka o kala ia wale o koe happen ngā me ngi vai kau
Yeah.
ia wai wha makala fo ile story lea wha kuma futi ia e pe ka o e wha palangi it's like a shipwrecked
Mm,
lovers Filele pe o se wha au kuka ia awa mapu aku yuka. Ale whainga ko inga malo maku o le wha makalanga. O le story o le wha kumafuki. All because o maungangi e lua ngā e. E le imasi sio ka kou. E maari ele history. O maunganga whe mai. I think ke mianga wako i palalangi ma ai i landforms ma metrographical forms a kukuwila ia.
mm,
Wha mau e la ko piece of land lea. Ka luaila ngā e. Le formation mawangi e dua. Ia, later on e loe whapalangi mwhai maku i kala ku tala tusi. That e ia kala whaasolo piko sa moe whakau i mawangi e dua. Whaaso mafuti. E ngā anga passed down. E lua umai ka koe ola misa ama peke ngofo i leongi. Peke ngofo i kuai ke le saule town. E ke i lua le story.
right.
Ka lua i whamakalanga ko i ngā maloma kua. Whai whawhangu. So today, the power of technology that the generation that technology has taken over mo babysitter ka maiki it's you e ko ela ko fa makala close to ya fa kuma fuki ku ku no fa nga ku
Yeah. But what's good about it, like what you said,
Yeah.
is it is captured in some of the stories, like even Moana, right? So in
Right.
Moana stories, you kind of see like some of these stories are similar to ours, but then it was Disney's brought to life. But we as islanders, rather than look at the unique stories and say, "Oh yeah, that we have a story that's similar to that," but what do? We get on social media and we say, "Someone, Moana is Samoan. No, she's not Samoan. She's this." Like you just missed the whole purpose of the beauty of
Right. It defeats the whole purpose
uh,
of Shaolin.
you missed the meaning of the underlying meaning of the story. You just want to make it unique to your island. Also, I see you're pondering a thought. What are you thinking?
So I was when you guys were talking about, stories been told, I immediately thought about my grandma, right? My grandma, her parents died when she was 5 years old. And you had stories where your grandma was talking, telling you and stuff. My grandma would tell us stories about what happened when she was 5 years old, woke up to find her mom and dad dead, and it was
Mm.
during the influenza.
Oh wow.
And she
Mhm.
would tell the story describing what she recalled. Remember, um, it took 3 days for her auntie to walk from, I think, Alepaca all the way down to Faleapunga. And it took that long because there were bodies, the bodies were,
Mhm.
she says she remembers that our own people, their bodies weren't handled with respect. They were just tossed on the road, didn't care, and because we're talking about the younger kids could not carry their parents' body, that the
Mm.
soldiers that were there at that time during that 1800s, just threw their bodies like trash, like dogs, and whoever was alive had to fend for themselves. And so she was with her parents, um, until her auntie showed up 3 days later to grab her and her infant baby, that sister, brother, that she didn't know how to care for, other than what she could just drip coconut liquid, whatever she could find around. I only say that because um, that was her. She kept the story alive by telling it,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how she could remember, so she don't forget in her old age, and so that we don't forget who her parents are. And I feel like however story is told, like Fatima Futi or whatever, it's or what, there's a reason behind it. But that was just my grandma's way to keep the story alive and keep the memory in her head, because as a 5-year old, that's all you can go off of, and so that's what I thought about. But I also thought very interesting, with Susana last night when we're talking. You cannot find any other culture other than in Samoa. I don't, maybe Tonga is probably the same. Any Samoans all over the world, you come up with that one song or whatever song, like Wafa Afetai, that everybody knows the song. Everyone will sing it, in unison, just like other songs. Every Samoan knows that we will all sing it in unison with a beautiful voice, and we just feel that spirit. And I feel like that's the same with the stories that are passed down.
Right.
It's all in unison, and I think that's the uniqueness of our people, is that we need to share the stories. We need to talk about it. We need to be able to be proud, no matter the good, the bad, and ugly, but understand that that's what makes us who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how we were able to protect our culture, unlike other culture that had lost their land, lost their language, lost their beauty of who they are, is because they backed down to things that they were afraid of, and they weren't able to stand strong like what our people have. And just going through reading and studying about our history and our culture, it talks a lot about how our Samoan people, these foreigners were saying that these Samoans, these Pacific Islanders, are very smart. They're very intelligent beyond other places they visit. They could not believe that we were able to even survive, being in contact with foreign people, that our body was able to withstand those different diseases and still be alive and still populate. Unlike other places where they lost so many people because of the new change and people that came into their existence and introduced things that their body wasn't immune to. But I didn't want to get sidetracked. But that's my thought. That's what I was thinking about.
No, I want to acknowledge all that was being said, about our Tutuila stories, and I want to also respect for our time. But I just wanted to tell our audience that there's more that we had planned to share, and I think we may not reach all of them because the other ones were, for example, the Mona resistance, and the blackbirding. So that was a good one that we also wanted to share. Um, what was the other ones that we think we probably won't reach? It'll probably be something we do our
Yeah.
Tutuila version 5 or something.
Limao.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Mao. So like,
Limao.
yeah, we wanted to bring the each of those chiefs, their perspectives of the Mao. So we wanted to read that, but we weren't going to read that as well. And then we also were going to cover the Tokelau, the Swains Island story. So um, Moni has a lot of ties to that. So I think that will be something we reserve for when Moni comes back, because there's so much that he can offer on that too. So apologies to our audience if you were waiting to hear some of these, but I don't think we'll reach that. What do you think, Leaso?
Yeah, there's we purposely put those topics towards the end because we knew some of our panel members weren't able to make it, but we wanted them to share their perspective on these topics because they had some close ties to some of the topics that we were going to talk about. And also, we knew that it was going to be a big discussion because there's so much to learn about what happened with the Tokulauans and their people, and how it also ties into blackbirding, and what happened to their population, as far as when we had back in the 1800s when all of those things happened. But I'm not going to get into details because I want to save that. But yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So I think we're gonna sort of wrap it. We're going a little bit over doing what we normally cover. So thanks again to our audience for tuning in. We appreciate you chiming in. Thank you to Sister Susana and Brother Kalani for joining us as well. Always great to have our panel members. And thanks to you, Lasso, for preparing all the material and all the research, digging up and organizing for our panel members. So there's a lot that you do behind the scenes. So thank you for all the work that you do as well. So turn it over to Susana for your last words. Then we'll turn it over to Kalani.
Oh, oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you guys. I think I've been away, but I'm so grateful that it's more like a refresh, and hearing of all panels and their and sharing stories. It's more like a reminder to all of us how unique our culture was, with the connection with everything, the environment, to our people, and to who we are today. So thank you guys.
Hmm.
Thank you, Susana.
Yeah, once again, thank you all for viewing our cast today. Uh, just want to let you all know that this podcast and this platform right here, it's all about any Polynesian out there. And my thing is, I would say the word is share. Let's share it.
Mhm.
No matter what story you have, please let's share it, because that's the only way that we can carry our legacy, and also the mana, and also the everything about our families and our history. Because I think that the more we share is the more that we can keep in track, and also that we can always write it down for the future of our generation. And my last word is in Samoan, whai waiesen ngana o sala
Mm.
ia malui ave fale. E whapena fo ino lafo inu ule ai ngā. Aua e poto lava le tautai e selo nā tuiama. Ia,
Yeah.
ia, maua pea le soifua maraloina le tatu atu nuu ia e mese fo i o loo whapea fo i ona fonga mai. E manu ia tele le whasausaunga ia alofo tele atu mo tau. Love you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I just wanted to add, and thank you, Arlington, for getting me very involved with, our history. Otherwise, I wouldn't be looking into it. But you know, I just want everyone to know that just like what Kalani said, this is for our Polynesian people and also to include our Micronesian and Melanesian brothers and sisters as well. Because as I looked into the history, we're all actually one, and
Connect.
yeah, and at the same time, you know, just learning about our culture. Our people do not want to be forgotten. You know, let's not forget that our ancestors do not want to be forgotten in a world of chaos. And as we go about on this earth that we're living, we want to be able to bring them back out. And someone said in a comment about just leave the past behind. Yeah, we're going to leave the past behind, but we're not going to forget, because our ancestors, they are the ones that made us. And just like Chief Awful Awful, forgive me if I said it wrong, he played a big part in Christianity in making us, you know, be a part of who we are. And all those who have gone before us, they played a big part in who we are as Samoans, Tongans, Marians, and you know, Pacific Islanders. And so let's not forget our people, and let's share stories. Let's talk about it. And if there's a story you want us to talk about or bring up, let us know. Send us a message, and we'll get into that and bring it out to life for all those who want to hear about your family story, your family's legacy, because that I believe is meant to be for us to share for everyone. So that's my say. Thank you.
Well, we've
Thank
all
you.
had our say, and again, thanks to all our viewers out there. We can't do it without you guys. So it's Sunday in some of the areas, and Mondays in some of the areas of the Pacific. So for those who are getting into Sunday, well, have a blessed Sabbath to you all. So that being said, for us,
It's almost
for
11:30.
yeah, good night to some of us, and good
Yeah,
morning
right.
to
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Manuela, boss.
Have a good night.
Got
Soy
fire.
fuwa,
Bless
manuya.
you guys. So
All right.